everyone, it's Priya here and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be using watercolor pencils to create this illustration of this frog and flowers, and I usually always tend to gravitate towards my watercolor palettes that I usually make myself from my tube paints or the palettes that I buy that's already ready-made. So those are usually for convenience and just for the speed of having them all laid out, and I use those. But today I want to show you how to use watercolor pencils in your paintings or in your drawings or illustrations. Now I am using my regular watercolor sketchbook, and I'm just going to be using the Derwent watercolor pencil set of 72 colors. Now I started off with a sketch with a graphite pencil just to sketch out the frog and get all the details of the flowers. I was initially going with a water lily in the background, but then I changed my mind about that and I went with just a regular flower just for the back, just to add a little bit of interest to the composition. And once I had the sketch done, I just lightened some of the areas up that were a bit too dark, and I went ahead and looked at my swatches. I usually swatch all my colors of my pencils, and I selected the colors that I wanted to use for this illustration. Now with watercolor pencils, they work in a layering process. I mean, you need to have enough pigment on the paper if you want to get smooth blending and proper solid coverage. Not solid in the sense of opacity, but to have a proper coverage of the color onto paper so that you can see it visually looking appealing and it's not looking too watered down. So I would always advise to start using or building up layers. So I'm using a range of different browns, terracotta, raw sienna, a gold sienna as well. I'm using some browns, some greens as well, lighter greens, some blue greens as well. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve with your painting or what you want your final painting to look like. But I'm building up layers and slowly adding the color to the paper with a pencil. Now I'm not pressing very hard. With watercolor pencils, you don't have to press very hard. I'm not really looking at the direction of my strokes. I'm not paying attention to any of that. All I'm doing is just layering in the colors that I want to build up the layers with. And I'm just adding a layer upon layer and adding some details, adding some darker areas, adding some lighter areas, blending the different greens together. And basically at this stage I'm only using the dry pencil. My paper is absolutely dry. I haven't wet it or anything at this stage, and I'm just going in with the pencils and building up layers. Now initially when you look at it this way, you will think that it's not really turning out good, but trust me, when you activate it with the water, or when I'm going to go over with the brush with water and really get that watercolor effect, that's when you're going to see the whole frog and the illustration come to life. So you can see I'm building up the layers. I'm remembering where my lighter areas are, where my darker areas are, shadow areas. I'm bringing those shadow areas, darkening them up. I'm keeping the form of the frog as well. Just basically layering and layering. And that's the main thing you need to do with any medium, even if it's watercolor pencils. Same with color pencils, you would use them and build up layers. But the good thing about watercolors is that once you add the water, it's going to become really vibrant and it's going to be really saturated and it's going to blend everything really smoothly together. Now this watercolor sketchbook I'm using does have a bit of tooth in it, but it honestly does not really make much of a difference to how I'm applying the watercolor as I would with the normal palette of watercolors, or with the paint or tubes of paint, or with the palette. You're still going to get that effect of the watercolors. So once I was done with adding the layers of the body and adding all the shadow areas and basically creating some of the patterns and designs on the frog, I colored the eyes in, and then I went in with my water and my brush. I'm just using a round brush and I'm just basically blending with water. I'm not adding more color at this stage. I'm just blending all that I've already put onto the paper, all the layers of the pencil. I'm just blending it all together with the brush. And you can see what a smooth, soft blend you get once you go over, and you're not really seeing any of those harsh lines. Even some of the design or patterns on the frog's body that I've put in, and it looked really harsh lines. Once I go over with the water, it really tones it down and smoothens it off. Now you can go back and add more layers once this layer is dry. Let it completely dry the paper and let it be 100% dry, and then you can add another layer with pencils and then go over it as well. You can also use the watercolor pencils just as they are if you want to add more texture to your final piece. So if you want to create a bit of a textured look to the frog, you could just go over with a dry pencil and not blend it out with water. But in this case, I wanted it to be very smooth and I wanted it to be very soft looking. So I just blended everything together. You can see now, once the layers are dry, I start adding more layers. I start adding a bit more details. I start adding a bit more details to the patterns on the body and the shadow areas on the body of the frog as well. And I'm just building up layers. But remember, always let the paper be completely dry before you go in with another layer of the pencil. And like I said, if you want to blend it, you can blend it again. Or if you just want to leave it as it is, you can. That's entirely up to you and what your personal preference is. So once I was done with blending the frog, I'm going to come in later on and add a little touches here and there. But I started working on the leaf that the frog is sitting on. And I'm adding varieties of blues and greens and some blue greens as well and lighter greens and even a bit of olive green as well, just to create a variety of different colors. And I'm not really paying attention to the direction of the strokes. You can see I'm just basically just layering in the pencil. And then I'm going over with the brush with some water. Make sure that you don't have too much of water because you could make it a bit too diluted. But you need to have enough water so that you can move the pigment around and you can blend it nicely together. So just keep a paper towel handy just to dab off any excess water and then just use the wet brush to blend, especially on larger areas. You need to have a bit more water but not too much because you don't want it to be too diluted with the water. So now once I was done with the blending, I'm just adding a little bit of some darker detail on the edging. And then I started working on the little leaves that are growing around the plants around the frog. And I'm just creating those little grass and little plants around just to create a bit of an environment for the frog. Now when it comes to the flower at the back, I'm just using a variety of greens and for the stem and the leaves. And I'm going to come through and work on the flower in a bit. Okay, this is where I was just working on a reel, but it's quite simple. All you do is just you use the pencil, layer it in, and then you just go over with the brush and with water and then just wet those areas and blend those leaves and plants together. So you can see now I'm going in with the water and I'm just using not too much of water. I don't want to drench the paper, but I am just using enough so that I can move the pigment around and get smooth blending. So you must always remember that when you're working with watercolor pencils, build up as many layers as you want or that you need, and the colors will look really vibrant once you are done with the entire painting or once you have added all the layers. Once you add the water on it, it's going to really pop and really bring the whole entire illustration to life, and it's going to really blend everything so smoothly. You can see now I'm working on the flower. I'm just adding some colors to the petals, varieties of purples and pinks as well. And then I'm just starting to layer in or go over with water and build up those textures or the blending of the petals of the flower. So you can see it's a very simple process. Watercolor pencils are so much of fun. I had so much of fun creating this piece and working with the pencils. It's actually made me miss working with them more often because I usually always tend to go towards my watercolor palettes instead of going to my pencils. But I definitely see myself using these pencils more, especially for getting some fine details as well. They are really helpful as well, and blending is really smooth. And like I said, it's like when you have the layers on, it doesn't really look like much, but once you go over with water and everything blends together, the image and the painting really comes to life and really pops. So that's what I really like about it. Now you can see I'm just adding some shadow areas here and there and really defining those shadows for the frog. These are just the finishing touches, nothing too complex. So there is the completed painting of this frog and flower, and I really had a lot of fun creating this with watercolors. This painting was a lot of fun. The entire process, I enjoyed it. And if you have been thinking about trying out watercolor pencils, I would highly recommend giving them a go because watercolor pencils are really fun to use and they can be used in so many different ways. This is just one simple painting that I've done, but if you play around with them and experiment with them, you really see that they are really a versatile medium to use for details as well as more looser painting. But yeah, I would highly recommend trying them out. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more art videos. Till the next one. Bye.